What starts here changes the world. I have a few suggestions that may help you on your way to a better world. And while these lessons were learned during my time in the military, I can assure you that it matters not whether you ever served a day in uniform. It matters not your gender, your ethnic or religious background, your orientation, or your social status. Our struggles in this world are similar, and the lessons to overcome those struggles and to move forward, changing ourselves and changing the world around us, will apply equally to all. So here are the 10 lessons I learned from basic SEAL training that hopefully will be of value to you as you move forward in life. Every morning in SEAL training, my instructors, who at the time were all Vietnam veterans, would show up in my barracks room, and the first thing they'd do was inspect my bed. If you did it right, the corners would be square, the covers would be pulled tight, the pillow centered just under the headboard, and the extra blanket folded neatly at the foot of the rack. It was a simple task, mundane at best, but every morning we were required to make our bed to perfection. It seemed a little ridiculous at the time, particularly in light of the fact that we were aspiring to be real warriors, tough, battle-hardened SEALs. But the wisdom of this simple act has been proven to me many times over. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. So if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. During SEAL training, the students are all broken down into boat crews. Each crew is 7 students, 3 on each side of a small rubber boat, and 1 coxswain to help guide the dinghy. Every day your boat crew forms up on the beach and is instructed to get through the surf zone and paddle several miles down the coast. In the winter, the surf off San Diego can get to be 8 to 10 feet high, and it is exceedingly difficult to paddle through the plunging surf unless everyone digs in. Every paddle must be synchronized to the stroke count of the coxswain. Everyone must exert equal effort, or the boat will turn against the wave and be unceremoniously dumped back on the beach. For the boat to make it to its destination, everyone must paddle. You can't change the world alone. You will need some help. And to truly get from your starting point to your destination takes friends, colleagues, the goodwill of strangers, and a strong coxswain to guide you. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we called them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They out-paddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys from every corner of the nation and the world always had the last laugh, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chaos Project podcast. Today we have with us Dr. Eric Nepute, who is a chiropractor and well, I mean, was involved in some lawsuits earlier on into COVID. So welcome to the show, and kind of introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Yeah, sure, Dale. My name is Dr. Nepute. It's a pleasure to be here. So like you said, I'm a physician. I've been a physician now this is my 23rd year in practice. I have a doctorate in chiropractic, doctorate in natural medicine. I'm a DPC, so doctor of primary care. I have a fellowship in functional neurology, a fellowship in functional medicine, and I've got a lot of common sense. And like you said, I've been in and around the healthcare space now for over 23 years. I've owned my own practices. I've got over 32 of my own practices that I've been a part of a hospital system, part of a surgical center system. We make peptides, we make nutraceuticals. I don't tell you those things to impress you, but to impress upon you that I've been in and around the healthcare space now on a massive level for, a long time. And like you said, during the pandemic, I was one of the first doctors to stand up and go, hey, something's not right here. And I think we'll get into the story of really what happened to me and through me because of, my stance against the government.
Yeah. So I saw that you were one of the first whistleblowers, and I myself am a whistleblower in Canada. I'm a mechanical engineering technologist, and I whistleblew the engineering controls, which was the first step. So tell us a little bit about what happened to you and what you saw where you're like, this isn't right, and what you did when you came forward.
Well, Dale, look, in 2019, in I would say November, December of 2019, I personally had a really nasty cough that I just couldn't get rid of. And it was really weird because normally during flu season, it takes us a couple days to figure out, what's this strand going through, how do we help our patients? What are we doing this year? We just couldn't figure this thing out. And then all of a sudden 2020 hits and we hear, hey, there's this virus, something's going on in China. The world's freaking out. We had assumed, and it's assumed correctly, that here in St. Louis, Missouri, that we had already started seeing signs of what we now found out to be COVID-19. Long story short, we started seeing patients. Took us a while to get this figured out. We started really helping a lot of people and helping them with a 150-year-old homeopathic remedy like high-dose vitamin C, IV nutrition, zinc, vitamin D, all the stuff that we use for normal viral issues. We were using ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, all the common sense things that we've used before for the last 20 plus years in practice. But what really made it weird to me was in early 2020, when nobody could get a PCR test, the COVID test, right? And, yes. And I, at the time, was part owner of a PCR testing laboratory here it was in Arkansas. And I said, all right, well, I called the health department here in St. Louis, who we know, St. Louis is a big, small town. And I said, hey, we want to put together a drive-through PCR test at one of our practices. And we want to invite people. I have 116,000 tests that I will donate for free to people so that we can show that there's asymptomatic spread. I wasn't going to make a dime off it. I was going to lose money off of it because I wanted to show people that there's something called asymptomatic spread, which if you see that, that's a good thing. Dale, you probably know this. 40 million Americans get exposed to the flu every year, but not everybody has symptoms of it. The more people that are exposed, the faster we get over it and the better it is. And the more we can show that people may have these flus and colds and symptoms, but it's not a problem. Well, whenever we were going to run those tests, the health department was like, hell no, you're not going to do that. Because the first question they asked me and my lab director was, what amplification cycle are you going to be running that test at? And we said, we're going to run it at 25, which is the normal amplification. And immediately, you're an engineer, you can understand this. Immediately, the lab tech said from the state, from the St. Louis Department of Health, said, no, we've been told by the FDA and CDC it has to be 40 amplification. And immediately, my lab tech immediately said you're going to have 90+% false positives. And so as soon as I got the phone with him, he's like, man, something's not right here. We got a big freaking problem. And that was the first big aha moment in the spring of 2020. And then Dale, I was one of the doctors that was on the COVID Doctors Alliance, the Global COVID Doctors Alliance program, where twice a week I'm on Zooms and calls with doctors all over the country and all over the globe. I mean, everybody from Europe to Asia to the Middle East, talking about what are we doing to help our patients. And we were really making some big strides. Every day I'm talking to hospitalists and emergency room doctors about what we're doing and what we're seeing, and we're making a difference. And then all of a sudden 2021 hits, 2020 hits really, and just January 2020, and then the Biden regime comes in and all of that gets shut down. Doctors start getting come after. I had over 11,000 patients come through. I'm in one of my practices right now. I had over 11,000 patients come through our practices during the pandemic, positive for COVID-19, and nobody died. And and so instead of asking us what the hell we did, they sued me for $508 billion with a B. $508 billion with a B. And that was the start of my interesting last 6 years escapade that I've had. It's been a process.
I totally understand, because like I was doing the HVAC infection controls, and I was called in to do some dental clinics at the, after the first set of lockdowns in 2020. And when I looked at the guidance, I was like, this isn't going to work. I'm like, this is wrong. And so I went and talked to people and proposed changes and say, well, I got the cold shoulder, and I kept going. And finally I filed criminal complaints because it's negligence. If I did that, I would go to prison and so forth. So I saw the same type of, from obviously a different angle, but I saw that there was some issues going on. And so I knew early on. And so when you mentioned, because we had the liberals here under Trudeau, so we didn't have anybody that was actually proactively working to try to solve problems. So what was the big change that you noticed when the Biden regime came in?
Well, immediately, the same day, immediately, we as physicians who are practicing in the field could no longer talk to hospitals, hospitalists, or people across the country. If the hospitals did not follow Fauci's protocol, which was remdesivir, ventilators, and ultimately death with 86% of the people they put on, then they would not get their money. And so we saw immediate changes. And then doctors like myself were prosecuted, persecuted, and, gone after with the full extent of the law. Immediately we saw that. When Biden came out and said that there are 12 individuals, Robert Kennedy Jr. being one of them, that are the disinformation dozen, spreading more disinformation and responsible for killing more people than anyone on the planet, we were all like, what the heck is this all about? And then when people said, well, why wasn't Dr. Nepute on that list? Because, Dale, I was reaching 6 to 10 million people a week on social media.
Yes.
I found out the next week why I was not on there, because I got actually sued. I'm the first and only person ever sued in the history of the world under what's called the COVID Consumer Protection Act. And the COVID Consumer Protection Act said, if anyone tried to use fear to profit, which is exactly what Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, HHS, Tony Fauci, the entire Biden regime, that's what everybody did. It's what I did not do, but they tried to make an example of me because of the reach that we were having. And the biggest reason why, Dale, is because we were destroying the spirit of fear. We were destroying people's fear. We were giving people hope. We were giving them facts about what was going on and how their body works. And that was a big no-no to our government at the time, because I don't know, Dale, if you know this, but in the United States of America, after World War II, there was this act that was signed into law called the Smith-Mundt Act. And the Smith-Mundt Act made it illegal for individuals to, the government to propagandize the United States of America, to give us false information. You couldn't do that because of what happened in Nazi Germany. Well, when President Obama became president, the first thing he did was he repealed the Smith-Mundt Act, making it legal for the government to lie and propagandize to the American citizens. So even after I won my lawsuit, even after all the stuff I went through, I spent almost $6 million defending myself against the government. I lost over $30 million, Dale, in revenue during that time. Not to mention how much I lost off of my life from that. Like, you have no idea the amount of pressure. In fact, no one on the planet does. You want to know why? Because no one on the planet's ever been sued for $508 billion, including big tobacco, including Nazi Germany, including anyone ever. The Biden administration tried to intimidate me as a doctor, and that backfired in a way that they couldn't even imagine, because they didn't realize that I was going to stand no matter what to fight against this. So it was a very, very, very interesting situation, and we're actually still working on coming out of it. So we knew that it was complete BS first and foremost because of what I told you about the PCR testing. And then whenever we saw the massive regime change and not allowing doctors to have doctor communication, and then when they said herd immunity is not a real thing, what the hell are you talking about? We learned it for 200 years as a doctor. Like we also know, like immunology 101 is you cannot vaccinate your way out of a pandemic. And when you do, you get genic spread. And like, it's just like all this stuff that the science that we knew was completely thrown out the window. So it was pretty easy for those of us that had common sense and discernment to see what was going on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, here, like when I looked at what they did and I started to look at not just the engineering, but every step, they did it wrong. Like that, the first thing they were supposed to do is to put engineering controls even before you got to quarantine, because you can't quarantine without engineering controls, because that's just the way it works, right? And all these guys like the NIH and the NID, the Public Health Agency of Canada, they all knew this. And then when I saw that, and then I watched everything that they did after that, I'm like, this makes no sense. It was like they departed from reason every step of the way. Like I talked to doctors, I talked to industrial hygienists and so forth, epidemiologists, and everybody was telling me the same thing. And it's just like, why? Like, I mean, so after this whole issue of you getting sued, what ended up happening with that? Like, I know they dragged you for...
Well, let me tell you this story. This is so crazy. Like, you can't make this up. In fact, there's a book I'm writing called, let's just say it's crap you can't make up, with the adult word for crap, because you can't make this up, okay? So, Dale, let me tell you this. I was sued by the U.S. federal government for $508 billion, okay? When I was sued for that much, we were supposed to go to trial in 3 months, okay? 3 months after my lawsuit dropped, that they dropped it on me, the government asked for an extension because they weren't ready to go to trial. How in the hell do you sue somebody for $500 billion and not be ready to go to trial with them, okay? That's kind of like a big red flag right there. So listen to this. So they got a 3-month extension to go. And by the way, I had to put a $1.5 million retainer down for my law firm. $1.5 million retainer. Okay. I don't know too many people, let alone doctors, that have that kind of capital to do it. And I was blessed to have it. Okay. The good Lord put me in the right position. So they delayed this for another 3 months. 6 months comes in, and now the government comes in. They changed the complaint against me. They said that I told people that if you take vitamins, you don't need a vaccine. Well, I never said that, ever. I never said that. I don't even believe that. I'll tell people you don't need a vaccine, period. But if you do take one, you better take some vitamin D and some zinc so you can have an immune system response to it. And we were given common sense solutions. But since the government changed their complaint against me and they added the vaccine into the complaint, my lawyers had to drop me from the case because they already had conflicts. Pfizer and Moderna already had them under retainer years ago. And this is a play that these big pharma companies do. They go and they get all the big players under retainer, regardless if they use them or not. And so here I am 6 months in, 1.5 million into my case, all that money spent. And now I got to find a new law firm. And now because the government put the vaccine into the case, now no big dogs can carry me. Nobody who's a big lawyer can handle my case. So I was thankful that I found a smaller law firm that was willing to go through the battle with me. But those guys were scared crapless the whole time going through this, because they'd never gone toe-to-toe with the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense and the FTC like that. So that happened. And then they delayed my case again and again and again. Up now, finally, here we go. Fast forwarding this to 2 years into my case, a study comes out, a 600,000 person study that the United States government did through the U.S. Army, that showed that if you are low in vitamin D, that you have a higher risk of COVID and that you could die from COVID, which put the nail in the coffin for what I was showing to them. They still continue to pursue this. And then in 2023, when the emergency situation was dropped, remember the emergency situation was dropped in 2023, and this case should have been dropped, because when the COVID Consumer Protection Act was enacted, when it was only under emergency use. Well, when it was dropped, the DOJ still didn't drop their case because they wanted to prove their point. So here we go, 2 weeks before my actual trial, 3 years into this case, the DOJ asked for something called a rule of summary judgment. The rule of summary judgment is basically the court being asked, hey, you've seen this. We know we're going to trial. Judge, what do you think? It took the judge about 30 seconds to say, he's innocent. You're never going to convict this guy. Good luck doing that. In fact, I'm recommending that you guys settle this now because I don't want this to be a mockery in my court. And so within about 30 minutes, I'm negotiating with the DOJ again, and they just heard from my judge they're not going to win. They just heard they're not going to win. In federal court, they just heard they're not going to win. And what did they do? Guess what they did? They gave me 3 choices. Choice number 1, we know we're not going to win. We'll go ahead and go through with the trial. We know that trial is going to cost you about another $500,000, Dr. Nepute, to go through the trial. When you win the trial, we're going to appeal this, and we're going to wrap you up into court for the next 2 years. It's going to cost you about another $2 million to do that. Dale, they froze my bank accounts. They froze my ability to make money. They did everything they could to destroy me because this is what the Department of Justice does. That's their playbook. So that was option number 1. And they said, when we do go to trial and you do eventually win at the appeal, we're going to put you under a gag order from the Department of Defense, and you're done being a doctor. Okay, you're going to get your money back that you spent on your legal fees, but you're done being a doctor. And I said, well, I don't like that option. What's option number 2? And they said, well, we can settle right now, put you under a gag order. You got an opportunity to negotiate your legal fees. You know, the 5.5 at the time, it was $5.5 million that I spent on legal fees. And they said, but you're going under gag order right now, and you're done. You're done being a doctor. You're done being on social media. You're done everything. You'll get your money back, but you're done. Listen, at the time, right now I'm 45 years old. I'm still a young guy. At the time, I'm 42, and I'm like, I can make more money, but I want my freedom. And I said, what's the third option? Because I don't like that. And they said, we'll give you a complete walk away right now. We'll give you letters saying that you're not under any investigation. We'll drop the case against you. We'll do all these things. But there's 2 caveats. Number 1, you have to pay us an $80,000 fine. And I was like, for what? They said, well, we've got to get something from you, which, by the way, they sued me for $508 billion. I gave them $80,000 in a freaking my settlement negotiation was literally extortion. Because if I didn't pay him $80,000, my next legal bill was going to be $250,000. And guess what? I didn't even have the $80,000 anymore. So what the hell am I supposed to do? So I took the deal. We did a payment plan for $80K with those guys, and the government settled their case against me. And then we went back and sued the government back. But Dale, did you know that the government has to agree to be sued back? So
yes.
They violated my 5th. Yeah, they violated my 1st, 4th, 5th, multiple amendments. And they violated what's called the American Procedural Act, which is the process they have to go through. They violated that. And when we sent lawsuits back to them, the government said, nah, we're not letting you sue us back. And so that's literally what happened. There's a lot more to it, Dale. Like, the government infiltrated one of my businesses. I had a company I started in 2016. I brought 2 partners on in 2020 to help me with the advertising, marketing, and operations because I'm so busy trying to save the world from COVID. I brought these guys on. The government infiltrated them, scared them to death, told them that if they didn't agree to settle with the government through my company, that they would lose their homes, they would lose their livelihoods, they would lose their future. The government intimidated them. I gave these guys equal voting rights in my company. They voted 2-1 against me. They gave $1 million to the United States government for my company that I could have stood and had money to fight the government longer if they wouldn't have done that. And then after they did that, because see, I tell people I'm a wellness warrior, not a wellness weenie. And as soon as my company did that, I publicly said this is not okay. And then I was fired from my own company that I started in 2016. They Steve Jobs me out of a job and then took away my last amount of income possible. So how am I supposed to defend myself against the government, who's got trillions, who, by the way, spent $17 million of American taxpayers' dollars coming after me to get nothing in return from me. So it's wild.
I get this. This makes more. The more I hear people talk about things like this, the more I understand why what happened to me, because everybody knows that at the first step of the pandemic response is engineering controls. And when I caught them out the gate, they would have been done, and that would be it. And all the other people that got prosecuted. Oh, yeah, I guess he had to take a call. Yeah, okay. So all the other people that got prosecuted wouldn't be able to get prosecuted because they got caught out the gate. And because when I went forward, I took them to court. The judge told the police who I was taking to court for not investigating the stuff about COVID to arrest me. And I got taken away, strapped to a bed, and they wiped me out. Like, this is Canadian Gestapo style. So my business plan was to stop people's businesses from shutting down during the COVID response, because if they followed the protocols that I gave, which were proper engineering controls, the government would have to bring me into court to sue me, right? And to sue them and explain why they did it wrong, and they didn't want to have any part of that. And so when I look at these things, like, I hear all these things, and this makes me very angry, because I see downstream all of the things that happened as a result of it. All the doctors, all the people who got the shots and everything. The COVID response is 100% criminal, and they need to be brought to justice. And like, if the government is caught in crimes, that becomes a different story. And that's what they did.
Dale, listen to this. There was a study that came out in 2022 that literally said that if doctors and scientists were talking about the benefits of vitamin D alone during the pandemic, we could have saved the lives of 3 million people per year in the United States alone. Globally, we could have saved the lives of tens of millions of people if scientists and doctors would have just been talking about that. So it's not just about the legalities. It's about the loss of life.
Yes.
It's about the suffering that happened. It's about the precedent that was set that we cannot let happen ever, ever, ever again. I mean, listen, they lied and people died. And that's more than just a freaking phrase. People's lives are still negatively impacted to this day. Just in the United States of America, there was a Senate hearing just this last week that finally put, again, the nail in the coffin that showed that Fauci manipulated data. He lied to people. They manipulated the info at NIH, NIAID, CDC. They manipulated the White House. And that is why this went the way that it went. And Fauci's organization made over $400 million documented off of this. Guys like me that were literally saving people's lives lost everything. We can't let this happen. This is criminal. It's disgusting what's happened. And I'm going to tell you something lovingly. And listen, I'm a God-fearing man to the 90th power. Like, I'm going to tell you, the 10 Commandments I follow, and I try to follow every day. And thou shalt not kill is a very serious commandment for me. But I will also tell you that Jesus also said in the Bible that better off for you to tie a millstone around your neck and jump into the lake than hurt the littlest of these. And they ruined our children's lives and futures. This practice that I'm in right now, people come to see me from all over the world because of the COVID injuries that they have and the problems that they have with this virus that came out of a lab in Wuhan, China, that everybody, 99.999% of the world agrees with. And the only people who disagree with that are the ones that were in on it or the ones that profited from it. It's disgusting, and we can never, ever let this happen again.
I agree. And even with like Fauci, what he did, speaking about Wuhan, at the beginning of the pandemic, and they put it in the emails that they put out about Fauci, he downplayed what they were doing at the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg, where Dr. Chu, a Chinese national, sent the Bangladesh strain of the Nipah virus, Ebola, and so forth over to Wuhan, right? And then, lo and behold, the genomic profile that Dr. Shi Sengli put out, what did it have? The infectious clones of the Bangladesh strain of the Nipah virus that shouldn't have been in there. And people thought there was co-infection between COVID and Nipah virus and so forth. And they concealed this. And I'm like, what it reeks like. When I sat down and I put my report together, I said, this looks like what would happen. Because, Dr. William Mackis, he did the excess deaths. I went and took doctors and different professionals and put a report together and said, this is exactly what would happen if you looked to put out a biological weapon, because you would have all these excess deaths because you put out COVID, then you put in the shots that were worse, and then you get a bunch of people dead, right? This is what it seems like.
But not just that, Dale, listen, Luc Montagnier, who was the French doctor who found HIV in the 80s, Luc Montagnier looked at the COVID DNA work. And Didier Raoult, also in France with him, looked at it, and they found in the COVID-19 DNA sequence part of the HIV sequence. It's still to this day in there. That is why SARS-CoV-2 acts just like HIV as an oncogenic type virus, which means it gets into the immune system and it turns down the killer T cells and the helper T cells, lowering your CD4, CD8 blood test, weakening your immune system. That's why Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, all these autoimmune issues are on the rise. And that's why we see still to this day the turbo cancers that are happening and have happened, because it gets in and weakens your immune system. This is why we see so much depression, anxiety, and insomnia. And we see also a part of the brain called the parasympathetic nervous system, Dale. It's part of the brain that helps rest, relax, grow, digest, and heal. We see that turned down on folks because this virus does that. And so this is just like other viruses that have escaped from a lab. We know this. We know, like, just Marty Makura, the guy who was supposed to be the head of the CDC here in the FDA here in the US, was just had to resign last week because he came out and was talking about how Lyme disease is a bioweapon, and that the CIA shows the documents of it. It's in the congressional reports. So if anybody thinks this stuff is some weird conspiracy theory, which basically means it's fake, like, you got to pull your cranium out of your rectum and realize that life is not all sunshine and rainbows, man. And we're being lied to and manipulated. And folks like me and folks like you that are there, that are just trying to do the right thing, sometimes it takes us a little bit of stress and pressure to realize the game is rigged against us. There's a club that we don't belong in. And I don't want to belong to that club, but I want to be left for sure alone. And all I know is that I answer to one entity and one entity only, and that is my creator. And we were all created equal, all of us. And just because you've got some names and some NIH, NIAID, you got a DR, or you got something in front of your name, that doesn't mean jack diddly squat. Because one of these days soon, every single person is going to have to stand in front of their creator and answer for the consequences they had. And they may have had it easy here because they lied, cheated, and stole, but boy, where you're going, it ain't going to be easy on the other side. And all I got to say is all I know is vengeance is the Lord's. Trust me, because listen, no one, I don't know anyone on the planet who's been through the ringer harder than I've been, at least on the COVID aspect. Okay. And I know the players, I know all the players in the deal. I spent the entire 4 years of the pandemic traveling all over the country, doing lectures and educating people and speaking in front of millions of people, because I was told that if I was quiet, the government tried to silence me. But then I was told by folks that went through the same thing I went through, that if I was quiet and I didn't keep in front of people, that I would either disappear or I would not be able to be found anymore.
Exactly.
You know exactly what that means.
Oh, yes. We're going to continue this. I got to take a short break and play a little ad here. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Hello, friends. My name is Keisha, and I'm a proud member of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. And I'm also a survivor of human trafficking. My trafficking began in Saskatchewan, moved into Alberta, and even crossed into the United States. I was stalked, hunted, and ignored by the very systems over the last 5 years that were meant to protect me. This is why, with my father Dale Richardson, we started the Caris Project. This is an Indigenous, survivor-led movement for humanity dedicated to exposing trafficking, government corruption, and holding institutions accountable. One of the most powerful tools that we are using is the petitions for redress of grievances. These are lawful constitutional actions rooted in Canadian and US law, and in treaties that tie us together across provinces, across states, and even across borders. These petitions are precedent-setting. They create a binding record. They demand accountability while representing reconciliation in action. Indigenous and non-Indigenous people working side by side to preserve liberty for all. But we cannot do this alone. We need your help to keep this movement alive, to raise awareness and to build a legacy of justice for Indigenous women, for trafficking survivors, and for families everywhere. Thank you. Please stand with us. Your support makes this work possible. Together we can restore justice, heal families, and defend freedom. And I will close with my favorite quote. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who cannot be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole, and men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. Thank you.
So yes, if anybody wants to support the work that we're doing, you can see the QR codes that are there. You can also go to mypillow.com/Karis and get yourself some good pillows and the other products that they have there. Or if you're watching on Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, or Vocal, you'll see links in the description. We have merchandise and other different ways that you can support. And please like and share this information. We're having a very important conversation today. And sort of kind of getting back to what we were saying, there is a definite need for accountability. And I'm a Christian, and this is where my whole issue was when they saw what Esau was doing. Like, I can't allow evil to happen. And like when in Romans 12 it says that you should abhor evil, that word literally means negligent. If you see something and know it's going to harm somebody and you do nothing, you're liable. And I'm like, I can't do that, so I'm not going to allow this to happen. And that was it. And people asked me, what did you want? And I said, I want justice, because at the end of the day, every man has to go before the judgment seat of Christ. And I'm not going to hear those words, I never knew you. Sorry. And so we need something to be done. And while, yes, everybody's going to face their judgment, there still needs to be a check on this evil now, because what they're doing is unconscionable and it's satanic. There's no other word for it, because this is, I would never be able to picture this happening until I saw it.
Yeah.
There's no.
I agree 100%, but here's the thing though. I think we're at a point now in our civilization where words don't mean what they used to mean. When you say, I want justice, okay, what does that mean? What's justice, right? Because if you ask me justice, it's not me getting my money back. Like, that's not justice for me. Okay. And there's this initiative right now that in the United States, I don't know if you saw this or not, Dale, but just a week ago, President Trump had a lawsuit against the IRS for $10 billion, and he was going to win that lawsuit. And so instead of, he dropped his case, and he said, all right, a caveat of dropping the case, there's a couple things. One of them is you can never go back and look at my taxes again, which is interesting. But the second one is that I want a fund put together for all the people that had lawfare against them during the pandemic. And he put a $1.776 billion, so 1776, very interesting,
Yes.
that he put 1776, but 1.7 billion that he put a fund together for people like myself to go back and get the $36 million that I lost from the government. Great. And that's just money. I could care less about money. If I cared about money, I would have sold masks and gloves during COVID. I would have shut my practices down and done all the stuff that the government wanted us to do. Right.
Yes.
And so to me, that's not justice. Like I told the government I wanted an apology. And you know what the government told me? They could not apologize to me because there's a threat against national security if they apologize to me. So I don't know what justice looks like, right?
Yes.
They knew they did it wrong, but what's justice look like? I do a lot of work in other areas of the world, and not to say it's right or wrong, but once a year in the Middle East, they cut people's hands off that steal stuff in front of everybody out there. You know what that does? It stops other people from stealing stuff. And I'm not saying that we should have corporal punishment. I'm not saying you do whatever you do, but for me, like, justice is a different definition. And I you know what? Here's what I'll tell you. When the government said to me, when they said that those are the three options that they were going to give me, and my judge, who was the arbitrator judge at the time, when we were going back and forth, and he said, what do you want me to tell the government? I said, do me a favor. I want you to tell them all that I forgive them because they know not what they do. I'll never forget what they did, but I forgive them. And he told me when he said that, they were physically agitated when I said that to them. Yes. They were you know why? Because those little demons inside those people were all mad and agitated, because they knew this was not about money. This is about, we fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and rulers in high dark places.
Yes.
And I was the first doctor that I know publicly that said that, and that's why they came after me so hard. That's why. So I want justice too, but I couldn't give you a definition of what justice really is. And I don't know if you can or if your listeners could, but I'd like to know what justice means, because we need it. We need it bad.
Yes, and I agree with you. And on a biblical level, it means consequences. Because what is a law if there is no consequences for it, right? Because the Bible says the wages of sin is death. So you're like, okay, well, I know that God says I will have life, or I can choose death if I break his law. So you know the consequences of it. Here, there's no law if you don't have a consequence for the law. And what people need are consequences. And that should be up to the people, but there has to be consequences. People should not be able to murder millions of people and walk away with it and just say, oh, I lost my job. No, I'm sorry. You need prison. You need whatever the law gives you for those types of crimes. And I don't care what it is, because you should have never did it before. Because when people, like, when I watch people with this sort of I didn't know sort of nonsense, I'm like, I don't care at this point, because a lot of you guys are lying. Yes, some people were coerced and so forth, but there are people that had that deliberate intent. For example, to do what they did with the engineering controls. You know how many hands it had to pass through to do something where you had a whole whack of paperwork to show that this worked, to give you something that didn't work. That's intent, and that's done. And the people that did that, they need to get the fullest extent of the law. Guys like Fauci, fullest extent of the law. Everybody else who knew what they were doing and did it anyway, you need to get maximum punishment. So it doesn't happen.
Dale, I don't know how it is. I don't know how it is in Canada, but in America, if I, let's say, forget to pay my taxes, or I don't know how to pay my taxes, I can't go to the IRS and go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that I should have done that. I'm going to jail, right? They're going to make an example of you for that, okay?
Yes.
And here's the thing too. And I told the doctors that we actually had conversations with, that were with NIH, NIAID, and all the government's doctors who are nothing more than yes men. They literally hire the dumbest doctors on purpose, because if you're stupid, you literally can just be stupid and go, I didn't know. And so that's their excuse. And I said, look, in 3 years, when you know the things that I know, because you finally get a chance to have somebody read it to you, because I actually already read all the documents and you agree with me, you can't come back and say, hey, sorry, the science has changed. No, the science was the same then as it is in the future. We just knew it. And I can't be punished because I knew something you didn't know. Listen, when the last time I testified in front of Congress, one of the congressmen who at the end of my testimony stood up and said, listen, Dr. Nepute and his colleagues were right about COVID, where all the other doctors were wrong. What else are they right about that all the other doctors are wrong about? And that's what people should be paying attention to, because your health, like what you have in Canada, God bless you guys. It's horrible. It's worse than the United States in some cases, right? Your Health Canada, I try to work with them, and it's like, you want to talk about some of the most incompetent, inept people on the planet. It's the people running the Canadian and running the U.S. health centers. Bobby Kennedy Jr. is doing a great job trying to shake things up, but look at all the pushback that he's gotten. Speaking of doctors, listen to this, Dale. Part of one of the chapters in my book, Crap You Can't Make Up, during the COVID pandemic, what happened to me? The U.S. government hired an expert witness. Okay, he was a doctor from Washington School of Medicine, one of the top medical schools on the planet. And this guy literally is a hired gun hitman. He's never treated a COVID patient in his life. Okay, the guy's literally just hired to, by the government to destroy people like me. My team did a private investigation on that doctor. Guess what we found? The same guys. Remember when Tony Fauci paid $9 million to change the proximal origins of COVID-19 paper? The doctors originally came out and said, hey, this definitely came from a lab. He gave them a $9 million grant. And they go, hold on, let me erase that. This definitely came from the Wuhan wet market. Okay, so we found that the expert witness on my case got a $9 million grant from NIH, NIAID, and Tony Fauci to make COVID vaccines here with the university, the same amount of money that Fauci's allowed to give out without any oversight. He doesn't have to ask for permission. So when we shared that with our judge, the judge was like, I can't believe this is crazy. And he wanted to throw the case out in a mistrial, but he couldn't. You know why? Because his position's a political position. He's in the federal court system. He was appointed by President Obama. He was the first African-American appointed head of the Supreme Court in the state of Missouri. Ronnie White, amazing guy, gave me such a fair trial. By the way, he passed away just last year. And it was all political. He even said, this is all political. I'm not letting this go in my court. Like, that's what was happening in America. And nobody knows that that was the case. Like, you can't tell me that it's okay for the government to treat me wrong and to violate my rules that I have, that we have as citizens. We have rules protecting us from, by the way, the guys that used to be citizens who are now in the government, who when they're out of the government are citizens again, right? Protecting us from those people. And if you violate those laws, then you go to prison or you die. Like, that's what the law says. But my lawyers, when the government would do some shady crap, you know what they would say? What do you expect us to do? It's the government. That's what they said.
And that's the problem, right? This is why, like, we did this petition for redress, and we had somebody take it into Representative Anna Paluna just this week, and Eli Crane and Mike Lawler. They went and we sent it to start to other people. We're getting people to come in and bring this into the local congressional offices, because the First Amendment right to petition for redress of grievances is a very powerful thing. They've tried to neuter it, but the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence especially, gives you its importance, because after they listed all the causes that impelled separation, they said that our humble petitions were met with repeated injury. And that is the reason why they literally penned the Declaration of Independence, because that was the final straw. Because when the judges and everything else were done and they were being unfair, their last recourse was to petition the government. And when that happened, that failed, 1776 happened. So now we're going back and telling people that they have a right to do this, because the issue that they're having with the judges and the politicization of it and the weaponization of the judicial branch is something that only Congress can fix. The executive and the legislative branch are the only ones. Go back to the Federalist Papers and read the way the framers talked about the way the structure of the government and how it's supposed to work. So this is literally the mechanism. So when they tell you they can't do anything, they're lying. They're lying.
I know that. I do know that. I know that 100%. And then when you push it, because that was all it was at that time, was political stagery. That's all it was. Look, I just pulled this up. This document that we filed with the government, to my countersuit, we showed how the U.S. government violated my First Amendment freedom of speech. Like, I had the freedom to talk about what I know about. I had the ability to talk about it. So they violated my First Amendment freedom of speech. My Fifth Amendment of due process. Dale, they drug out a civil case for 3.5 years, froze my bank accounts on a civil complaint. That does not happen. They froze my wife's bank accounts on a civil complaint. You don't do that kind of stuff to an American. Nobody's ever had that. I was debanked, deplatformed, everything. Listen to this. They violated my Sixth Amendment fair trial concerns. They massively violated my Sixth Amendment rights, and they violated my Eighth Amendment, which is excess fines. Dale, they fined me $508 billion. Billion. Are you kidding me right now? And then, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's something called the American Procedural Act. The American Procedural Act is basically the agreement between the U.S. government attacking citizens and businessmen and women. And there's a 7-step process that they have to go through. Like, for example, the first thing that happened in my case was the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, sent me a letter saying, hey, you're in violation of fair marketing and saying the wrong things, blah, blah, blah. So the first thing that's supposed to happen is we have a meeting with the FTC to find out what is the concerns. What are you claiming that I said is a problem? So we called the FTC, had a conversation with the regional director of the FTC, and we said, all right, what's wrong? What did we do wrong? And you know what? They wouldn't tell us a thing. They wouldn't tell us a thing. They wouldn't tell us. They're supposed to. They're supposed to say, well, you said this and you did it wrong, or you don't have anything to back this up, and where's the date on that? But that's what's supposed to happen. So what's supposed to happen is we're supposed to have a meeting, and I'm supposed to hear their complaints, and then I'm supposed to show, like, how I validate or justify what I did, or if I agree with them saying I did something wrong, what's the change that we did to adjudicate that, and we don't have that problem anymore. That's a 3-step process that they skipped. And then what's supposed to happen is if I don't do that, and there's a human being that files a complaint that shows that there's someone that's actually been injured or hurt, which has never happened. Not one person ever said that there was a victim. There was no victims in my crime. Not one.
Yes.
Nobody. Okay. And so then they're supposed to say, if I don't do anything wrong, or if I did do something wrong and don't fix it, then we go to trial. You go to trial at a low level. You don't go in the Fifth Circuit Court of Missouri, which is one step away from the Supreme Court. That's not what happened. They violated my American Procedural Rights Act. And if they can do that to me, they can do it to anybody unless there's some type of accountability held. And that's what we're asking for. All we want is accountability so this doesn't happen to someone else again. Life is all about having things happen, learning the lessons, and getting better from that as an individual, an organization, and as a society. That's how we've become great in our civilizations. But if we don't have that now, Dale, we're done as a society, completely done. And nobody should trust our government. And nobody does trust our government right now in America. And the only ones that do still have their craniums up their rectums. And that's fine. That's their decision. But they don't have any rights to tell me what I should or should not do. So it was pretty wild here. And it's still very wild here. Dale, listen to this. I was reaching about 6 to 10 million people a week on social media. We spent about 12 years building up our social media presence because that's one revenue. That's one distribution of my business and revenues. We spent millions of dollars over that decade building that up. Well, I was one of the individuals that was named in the Twitter files. I was one of the doctors that was personally shut down on social media by the Biden administration. After Trump won the election in 24, we actually were able to get a hold of Meta. So remember when Zuckerberg came out and said, hey, we did the wrong things. We were forced to shut people down. The government told us if we didn't do these things, we're going to lose our businesses. We're going to lose revenue. We have to follow the rules or we're done. He came out and said, we want to right the wrongs. So we got a hold of the number 2 person in the department that takes care of social media accounts that get deplatformed. And this woman, we're on a Zoom with her, and she says, hey, we found Dr. Nepute's social media account. And normally it's in this little file over here. But here's the file. Here's 30,000 foot of crap. Then we found Dr. Nepute's file down here with a red little bow around it. And I jokingly said, oh my gosh, does that mean I need an act of Congress to get my social media business out of Facebook jail? She goes, no, you need the president to do it. Because it was put into that place by White House decree. The United States White House personally put my stuff in Facebook jail, and it's still to this day in there. And there's still, just up until about 4 or 5 months ago, I couldn't even send an email to all of my email subscribers. I got 2.5 million people on my email list. I haven't been able to email them for 3.5 years because anytime my name was attached to Google, it wouldn't allow the freaking email to go through. It was spammed or it was looked as misinformation. That's crazy. And the reality of it is that I had over 11,000 people that didn't die. How many people did Fauci and his plan kill? Like, that's a fact. And there has to be accountability for that.
Oh, yes. And like I tell people, you don't ask for accountability, you demand it. Because there isn't a free country on earth that says that tyranny is constitutional, especially not in the United States. So at this point, this is where the people need to force the issue. And that's where I'm at and this is what I've been telling people, because I put stuff on the record about COVID and all these other things, and that's tied to the judicial branch that they've completely captured to allow tyranny to come in. And when you have a weaponization of this, you will never get justice. Like you read in the Bible, and it tells you that justice must be done in the gate. Because if not, then violence, the land becomes violent. And if you have no court system and you have no way to restrain tyranny, it's going to flourish. And so they have to do something. And this is where we're at right now. I know that we're kind of running up here on time here. So here's your like 2 minutes or whatever. What do you want to say to people and so forth, and how can they help you?
Well, here's what I would say to people. Like, live your life the way that you want to live your life and leave everybody else alone. Okay? Like, what I do and what I say, that's up to me, and that's up to the people that follow what I do. And if I say something or you do something that offends me or I offend you, sorry, move on. Like, we've got to stop being so sissified in our world. It's not working out for us. Common sense is common still in the world. There are places that we can have that, but we can't have censorship. We can't have tyranny. And it's our responsibility to stand for something. Listen, my mother taught me when I was young, you have the ability to do something and you have the responsibility to do it. And listen, Ephesians says all day long, when there's nothing left to do but stand, you stand therefore. So what I would tell people to do is this: stand for what you believe in. Don't be shy. Don't be worried about what other people think or will say about you. Don't be intimidated. You all of you across the globe have a light that needs to be shown. Let your light shine. Don't dim it because of somebody else's thoughts or opinions. And remember, when the thoughts and opinions on the inside of you are bigger and stronger than the thoughts and the opinions of the world outside of you, that's when you are at peace. That's when you have balance. That's when you can have the breakthroughs. And folks, listen, we've stood from the beginning, and I'm blessed to have had literally millions of people reach out to us and pray for us and continue to stand with us. And I'm telling you, I'm going to pursue the lawfare. I'm going to pursue the congressional the act that Trump just put in, the fund that's going to be there to help people like myself. Why? Because we must hold accountability. So I would love, please help me support this. Go to our website. Go to ericnepute.com. That's ERICNEPUTE.com. You guys can find me, Dr. Eric Nepute, all over social media. Right behind me, one of my brands is BioLimitless. You can follow us there, like, subscribe, and get the notifications so that we can do this together. Because I promise you, if we don't do something about this now, it's going to happen again. And it's going to happen again during our lifetime. And you are not going to be able to do anything about it because you didn't stand when the opportunity to stand arose. And now is the time, Dale. We must stand and do the right things.
I absolutely agree, because something has to be done. Accountability must be there. And they need more people to stand up and do what is right, especially the men, because I see more women standing up at this point in time. I need more men, and that's really the issue. Men need to stand up, men of God that are going to sit down and say, I don't care what you're going to do, we're not going to deal with this. And that's what we need. And so I'll close here with a prayer, and thank you for coming. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy, and all the things that you have done for us. And Lord, you see this situation that is here before us, and help that accountability would come, and to raise up the men and the women to do what is right. And watch over Dr. Eric and the work that he's doing, and help him to touch as many people and get the justice that he deserves, and the people that need the justice, and especially to protect the children who need this protection from this evil wickedness the most, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
All right. Thank you guys all for coming, and we'll see you again next time.